Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll have an update on key policy issues in Washington that could have an impact on your cattle operation. Plus, we'll have a summer market outlook from the experts at CattleFax.
Now, from the Denver headquarters of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, it's NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Auctioner. We begin in our nation's capital, where the staff of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association works each day to ensure our nation's lawmakers understand the issues that are important to cattle-producing families. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Russell Nemitz had a chance to witness these efforts firsthand at NCBA's annual legislative conference. He also caught up with one U.S. representative to get her thoughts on some of the issues that are important to cattle-producing families.
As always, there's a ton of issues back here in our nation's capital that impact U.S. farmers and ranchers every single day. And with us on the segment is one member of Congress, in fact, the lone member of Congress from the Cowboy State, Liz Cheney. Congresswoman, thank you for being with us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Caught up with you here in our nation's capital today, and I want to talk with you about some of the big issues that are impacting farmers and ranchers, more specifically for this segment, this audience, U.S. livestock producers. The BLM in states like Wyoming, Montana, Nevada, Utah, we have a lot of public land out there, and you weren't back in Congress very long, and you introduced a bill that pretty much rolled back the BLM's 2.0 rule. Talk about that decision and why it was important.
Well, thank you, Russell. It's great to be here with you. Great to have the chance to talk to so many great livestock producers from public land states in particular. BLM 2.0 was the first bill that I was able to get passed by both houses and signed into law by the president, the repeal of 2.0. And as you know, we just saw an onslaught in the last administration from Washington in terms of rules and regulations that didn't make any sense for our folks on the ground who are trying to make a living, trying to produce the food that we all need. And 2.0 was really indicative of those problems and challenges and would have really diminished the impact and the input that our county commissioners and other stakeholders have in our land management process, and would have instead opened things up much more broadly to a whole range of outside forces and outside groups, and really put Washington in a place in terms of making decisions that didn't make any sense at all for us. So I was really pleased we were able to get that done, and it's just been the first step in a long process and a long fight that I'm engaged in here in Washington to make sure that these federal agencies understand how important land management issues are to us and the reality of what's going on the ground, as opposed to one-size-fits-all decisions from in Washington.
Well, hearing you speak here at this spring's Public Lands Council NCBA legislative conference here in Washington, D.C., you also told these folks gathered here in Washington that there seems to be a lot of positive momentum for a change here in the nation's capital, and we need to kind of capitalize, if you will, on this change back here and this momentum.
We do. I think you've certainly got a situation where we have an administration in place now, majority in the House and the Senate, of people that understand, have a better understanding of how important these issues are, and of how the role of the federal government's got to be reduced. But we have to take advantage of this moment and advantage of this momentum to make sure that it doesn't pass, that we don't take it for granted, and work with the administration to make sure that they know the issues that matter. Places where they can take action, they should, and it's sort of, one of my jobs is to point those places out. Places where we need legislation, obviously we're working in that regard too, but in so many cases we're pushing on an open door because the administration wants to do the right thing, and part of it is just educating them about, listen, this is what it's like, to be a livestock producer in Wyoming, in our other public land states, and what the kind of relief that's needed and the kind of encouragement so that these industries can really grow.
Well, if you want a conversation starter, at least when you're back home in states like Wyoming and Idaho and Montana, bring up grizzly bears and wolves. And what about the need for some reform to the Endangered Species Act? We've learned a lot from these two species, haven't we?
Right. Well, the Endangered Species Act is clearly fundamentally, it's broken. It's not performing the duty or the objective that was intended when it was passed. We've only had 2% of the species ever be recovered. You've got environmental groups that are clearly exploiting it and abusing it and proposing, designation of mass numbers of species all at once, and using our court systems then to challenge what goes on. So we do need to get it fundamentally reformed. We also have got to figure out a way to get the court system out of the way, because we've seen, certainly with respect to grizzlies, with respect to wolves, situations where scientific decisions have been made to delist and the court systems step in and question that and really throw a wrench into things. That shouldn't be allowed to happen. I've got a bill with Congressman Peterson that really focuses on, look, let's not allow any future judicial review of the wolf delisting. We need to do the same thing for grizzlies. And we need to do something about the Equal Access to Justice Act, because that's just a pot of money that particularly these environmental groups are abusing, and taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for that. I mean, that's really sort of, we've got to get some transparency into that system.
Hey, before we let you get back to work on Capitol Hill, states like Wyoming are an export state. How important is it to maintain trade relationships, whether it be with the Canadians or the Mexicans, or here of late, what's been talking a lot about regarding Chinese in the Pacific Rim?
It's crucially important. I believe strongly in free trade. I think that we need it in our economy. We've got to make sure that those foreign markets are open for our goods. And I worry if we are going to go down the path here that we've started, which looks like a trade war. I don't think that serves anybody's purposes. We've got to make sure that others, the Chinese in particular, are abiding by the rules. But I'm worried that we're going to see a real backlash. We've already begun to see it against American ag products in particular. In a situation where we see markets shut down to us, and that doesn't serve anybody's purpose. So we've got to make sure everybody's abiding by the rules, but not in a way that ends up hurting our fundamentally important industries most.
All right, Congressman Cheney, thank you for being with us
Thank
on
you,
Cattlemen
Russell.
to Cattlemen.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much.
All right, that's going to do it for now. With that, Kevin, we'll go ahead and send it back to you in the studio.
As you've heard, there is strength in numbers on Capitol Hill. More members means our staff can do more in defending our way of life. So why not become an NCBA member? By doing so, you'll be supporting the work of NCBA in defending and advocating for the cattle industry in Washington, D.C. It's easy to do. Just call 1-866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org. February exports of U.S. beef were higher than a year ago in both volume and value, according to statistics released by USDA and compiled by the U.S. Meat Export Federation. Export volume improved 11% from a year ago, while export value increased 18% to $599.8 million. Exports accounted for 13.6% of total beef production in February, up 1 full percentage point from a year ago. Although exports are up so far this year, the spring has been a tough one for the cattle markets. But the summer grilling season is just around the corner, and with it, hopefully a price recovery. Joining us now to talk about the overall market outlook is Marcus Bricks of CattleFax. Marcus, thanks for joining us today.
You bet, Kevin.
So the talk in the market has been all about this Chinese potential trade war. Tell us what impact has that had on the cattle markets?
Well, from a beef shipment standpoint, really not many. U.S. producers are still working to increase our market access in China, and the amount that we export in beef today to China is still a very low percentage of our total exports. The markets, though, have definitely felt some short-term downside pressure. In periods of high risk, investors tend to flock away from more risky investments like commodities and into relatively safer instruments. And also markets tend to be very reactionary and price in kind of a worst case scenario. Okay. Longer term, the markets are still basically driven by fundamentals. And so today, all they have really to do is watch the negotiating process and wait and see.
Yeah. Attention for many cattle producers now is turning towards grazing season. What are you hearing about moisture levels and pasture conditions across the United States, and what impact might that have?
Well, moisture conditions, they've been tough, to put it plainly, so far this year. Right now, pasture conditions are among the worst 5 years on record, starting out the spring. And that's partly the reason why you'd see a lot of our feeder cattle and calves that would normally be outside feed yards still at this point have already found their way into the feed yard. Going forward, We know that our CattleFax meteorologist has a favorable forecast in the outlook. Right now, we're expecting a transition from La Nina more to the El Nino pattern this summer, which is good news. El Nino typically brings a cooler and wetter weather pattern across the majority of the cattle producing regions in the U.S.
Yeah. And so what are you all projecting relative to cattle markets and what they might be doing over the summer?
Well, fed cattle prices today are already starting to decline seasonally. Large fed cattle supplies are likely going to put a fair amount of market pressure on us really through the summer. Right now, we're looking that our downside risk might be testing around our 2016 lows. From a feeder cattle perspective, right now prices are trending higher. We expect those to reach somewhere around the low to mid 150s by the summer period. Calf prices right now are at or near their seasonal peak, and we'd expect them to kind of drift lower into a fall low time period.
Let's talk about the demand side of the equation, Marcus. What are we seeing from a beef demand perspective?
Well, right now, beef demand is fairly optimistic, both abroad and domestically. Beef exports are currently up 13% year to date, which puts us well on track to meet our forecasted 7% beef export growth this year. From a domestic perspective, we do have our beef production up this year, and March retail beef prices were actually up a little bit as well. So how that translates is that our consumer beef demand through the first quarter is up about 2%. So beef demand going forward through the summer, we're expecting it to stay fairly stout, which it's going to have to be. Right now today we have roughly 800,000 more cattle on feed in the U.S., and it's going to take a pretty favorable demand scenario to help us keep our market values from reaching too much lower with that really large supply we got in front of us.
So Marcus, given all the uncertainties we face, from weather to potential trade wars, et cetera, what advice do you give cattle producers as we think about rounding out the 2018 marketing year?
Well, the one thing we do know is that there's a lot of risk and uncertainty facing us still in 2018. From a production standpoint, we should be producing record volumes of beef, pork, and poultry, so keeping that export access is critical to make sure that we don't end up with too much volume here on our own hands domestically. As a producer, all you can really expect to do is don't be afraid to take a profit if you have one. Always be aware of what your break-even is, and that way you can better understand the risk that you face in the market, and you can put a risk management plan in place to help you best manage that risk.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing your insights with us.
Happy to be here.
CattleFax marks its 50th anniversary this year, and if you're looking for top-notch beef industry research, information, and analysis, then check in with the experts at CattleFax. Visit their website at CattleFax.com for the tools that'll help you make profitable decisions. Still ahead on NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman, we'll learn about the Beef Improvement Federation and how it's working to develop programs that benefit all segments of the beef industry. Plus, hear how NCBA and the Beef Checkoff are working to build beef's image as a healthy food choice for consumers. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Saddle up and make your way to Denver, Colorado for the 2018 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting. This is your chance to stay up to date on beef industry trends and policies. Meet with industry leadership and your fellow cattlemen and women. Plus, you'll get insights on hot topics at the Issues Forums. Mark your calendar for the 2018 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting, August 1st to the 4th in Denver. Find out more at ncba.org.
When you're in the cattle business, no matter how much it's a business, it still starts with cattle. It's this basic notion that sits at the core of how we approach things at Boehringer Ingelheim. We understand when you put the cattle first, it just naturally leads to doing the right things. If you want to do well in this business, you start by doing right. Take care of the cattle, and they'll take care of you.
Do you know all you need to about working cattle? Did you know there are proven methods that can reduce stress for the animals, for you and your crew? Now there's an easy way for you to learn from the experts who can help sharpen your stockmanship and stewardship skills. In interactive sessions, you'll learn better ways to work cattle more efficiently, skills that can help put more money in your pocket. Find out more and locate an upcoming event near you at the website stockmanshipandstewardship.org.
The Beef Improvement Federation has spent the past 5 decades working to enhance the beef industry. Here now to talk about those efforts is Donald Brown. He's the president of the Beef Improvement Federation. Donald, tell us just a little bit about the history of BIF.
Beef Improvement Federation began with a dedicated group of cattlemen that were focused on connecting sound science and research with cattlemen, with producers, and to be that conduit to bring that together. Began 50 years ago, and this year we'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary convention.
So what would you highlight in terms of some of the impact BIF has had on the beef cattle industry?
One of the original goals in that was to ensure the best profitability, the best sustainability, and the best efficiency for cattle production. So the goal of that is to do that through beef cattle genetics. And if you want to come to a convention where it's focused not on politics, not on sales or marketing, but focused on sound science and making better cattle, not just better bulls, not just better females, but better beef, more efficiently, more sustainably, more profitably, that's where the Beef Improvement Federation connects all of those together. And it started with an original intent to say, all right, let's bring all of the performance records together, and not only nationally but internationally, and that's what helped develop what now are expected progeny differences or genomically enhanced EPDs. It continues to grow as sound science improves our ability to select and produce better cattle.
It really is a phenomenal meeting. Last year was the first time I've attended, and it was very, very enlightening. I guess I would ask you, there are a lot of organizations that are focused on improving beef cattle.
Sure.
Breed associations and colleges and universities and academia. How does the mission of BIF either complement or differ from some of those other organizations?
I think it really complements all of those. We see it as the crossroads of where academics, where beef industry producers, and where our breed associations come together. And it's a great conduit to help transfer of information. At these meetings, I love it because we can hear great presentations from the guys that are doing the research. And then the hallway talk is wonderful. And there's plenty of time in the schedule for us to, if you're wanting to visit with the movers and shakers in beef cattle genetics, regardless of the breed, this is where it happens.
It is the meeting of the who's who, for sure. So let's talk about your vision for the future. Lots of big changes and challenges for the beef industry. What are some of the improvement goals for our industry that BIF can help us on?
Oh, absolutely. We've accomplished so much and learned so much, but I'm reminded of the words of our old ranch foreman that was my mentor growing up, who didn't even graduate from high school, but he had more wisdom than maybe anybody I know. And his famous saying was, the more I learn, the more that I realize that there's less that I really know. And the Beef Improvement Federation helps us take what we know, advance it, help us to be better at producing. And as we look at a growing global population, we've got to be more efficient at producing the better product to help feed the world.
That's absolutely true. So you mentioned this is an important milestone, 50 years in terms of the anniversary for the Beef Improvement Federation. How are you going to celebrate that milestone?
Hey, we're going to be in Loveland, Colorado. We have a great set of speakers lined up. And this convention, you don't see blazers. It's cowboys in blue jeans and boots that come to learn and visit and learn how to be better cattlemen. It's going to be a great time.
It will be. And we'll look forward to seeing you right back here in Colorado just in a few short months.
Sounds great. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Donald. Now remember, the 50th Annual Convention and Research Symposium will be held June 20th through the 23rd in Loveland, Colorado. If you're looking for details on the event, or if you'd like more information on the Beef Improvement Federation, visit the website beefimprovement.org. Still to come on Cattleman to Cattleman, we'll explain how NCBA and the Beef Checkoff are working to help consumers understand the nutritional value of beef. Don't go away. We'll have more right after this.
Say goodbye to your toughest pasture and rangeland weeds for good. Because one product offers season-long control, handles the widest spectrum of broadleaf weeds, and clears the way for increased forage with greater grazing flexibility. So you get more beef per acre at a cost that can't be beat. It's Graze On Next HL herbicide, and if it's in your pastures, plain and simple, weeds won't be.
No matter what job I've got to do, my John Deere 5E tractor can do it all. Whether I'm cutting, moving feed, or building a fence. Using my 5E means my work gets done faster at a price I can afford, and that works for me.
Welcome back. Every cattle producer, myself included, has been frustrated by stories in the media spreading false information about beef's nutritional value. That's why NCBA and the Beef Checkoff work together to help consumers understand the valuable role beef does play in a healthy, nutritious diet for people of all ages. Here to talk more about these efforts is Dr. Shealynn Mcneil. She's the Executive Director for Human Nutrition Research at NCBA. Shealynn, tell us a little bit about what the big storylines or headlines are in the nutrition world as it relates to beef.
Well, nutrition is still a real hot topic, and people are so interested in how they can eat healthier, and we're actually seeing more and more good news about beef and a healthy diet. Protein interest is at an all-time high. The public is looking for ways to incorporate protein into their diet, and beef is an excellent source of protein and nutrition. Another topic is saturated fat. You know, we're beginning to question in the scientific community whether or not saturated fat has those strong links to heart disease. And as more of that discussion takes place, we're seeing people open their eyes about the value of beef's role in healthy diets, especially even heart-healthy diets.
Maybe we've had some bad recommendations over the last 20 years, right? And relative to that, I guess I'd ask you, what are some of the research findings telling us more recently?
Our knowledge of nutrition is always changing, and beef is one of those foods that over time has consistently shown that it supports good health. We have a great new study coming out that the Beef Checkoff supported on the Mediterranean diet. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the Mediterranean diet is getting a lot of attention. It's why we think olive oil is such a great heart-healthy food. But a lot of people, when they define a Mediterranean diet, they say, well, it has to be low in red meat, low in beef and pork. And actually, we did research at Purdue University that is coming out. The scientists are starting to share their results, and it said these individuals were eating beef every day as part of a heart-healthy Mediterranean diet, and guess what? They improved their cholesterol. They lowered their blood pressure. They had great heart health benefits, and that's such good news for beef-loving consumers out there, and we've got a lot of those.
That is great news, and yet it takes that kind of research to kind of convince nutritional professionals like yourself. So my question is, why is it important that that research is funded by beef producers, and when it's funded by beef producers, is it accepted by your community?
You know, that's a really good question, because one of the things that we see in nutrition research is, like anything, dollars are shrinking up. There's less research funding out there. And beef farmers and ranchers have very specific questions about beef. And that's what the public wants to know, the practical things like, how can I include beef in a heart-healthy diet? Does beef really work to lower cholesterol when it's part of a heart-healthy diet? And that's what farmers and ranchers are funding. They're funding the research questions that matter to the public about beef. And it is accepted in the scientific community because Checkoff research goes through a very rigorous process that all scientists use. We have to publish it in the peer review. So before it's accepted, and we share that good news out with the public in a very credible way. So I think we do work really hard to make sure that the good quality science is accepted. I've got a great example of that too. It takes a long time for research to make an impact. And I think that's hard for farmers and ranchers to think about. We want results fast, you know? But think about this, just 10 years ago, we were really struggling with the topic of red meat and cancer, seeing a lot of negative headlines. Farmers and ranchers started investing in research and really being aggressive on the science and making sure that we know the answer to this question. And we saw dozens of papers published that says the evidence does not support meat and cancer. And just recently, the National Cancer Institute has come out saying there's not reliable evidence that a low meat diet reduces your risk for colorectal cancer. It's really all about a healthy and balanced diet. So we see that research, that persistence over time really does start to pay off.
That is great news for our industry and certainly for all of us who eat.
Yes.
Right?
And good news for me as a health professional. We want the truth, and we
That's
want to
right.
give people as much flexibility as they can with eating healthier diets, and beef is definitely a food that they enjoy eating.
So you spent your career as a health professional, and I guess I'm just curious, what is unique and special about beef to you?
Well, I'm not only a registered dietitian, but I'm also a mom. So I face those struggles of getting my kids to eat healthy. I've got 2 teenage daughters who are wanting to eat, whatever they want to eat. And one of the things that I love about beef and that people love about beef is it's a delicious food that is nourishing and it has nutrition. So we get the best of both worlds. We have these new ads coming out that I'm super excited about, and they say, "Nicely done, beef. You provide the benefits of a protein bar without tasting like one."
I love it.
And we want to eat for health, but we
Yes.
want it to be delicious too.
Right.
And beef pairs so great with vegetables and whole grains and makes balanced meals. So it's a wonderful food for nutrition.
It is. You've already convinced me, I promise you. And so tell us this, how do we get more positive recommendations about beef from other people like yourself?
We are challenged with an outdated image of beef and long-time negative perceptions amongst the health professional community. So we've got to continue to do science and make sure that science, like I've talked about, is shared with health professionals in a very credible way. One of the reasons I love working for farmers and ranchers is they're so committed to good quality science. We want the truth on beef's role in a healthy diet. And we want to go to health professionals and say, here's the evidence. And health professionals like me, as a registered dietitian, I want evidence to make recommendations. I want to give advice that is science-based. So we not only need to do the research, and this is something that we're working on with NCBA and the Beef Checkoff, is educating health professionals, medical doctors, dietitians, so that they can see the science on beef. Just last week we hosted a webinar where we shared the science on protein and beef and strength and how it builds a healthy diet. We had 700 health professionals join in. So it's a topic that health professionals like me are interested in because the public wants to eat beef and they enjoy beef, and it can be a great solution for health.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for the voice you're giving to the industry and for the science-based approach that you're leading to help people see the benefits of beef.
Well, I love what I do, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Now, if you've got questions about beef as a healthy food choice, a good resource to check out is the Beef It's What's for Dinner website. There you'll find all sorts of nutritional information, along with healthy and nutritious beef recipes. Still to come on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll have more on the Beef Improvement Federation, including how you can get involved with this important organization. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Saddle up and make your way to Denver, Colorado for the 2018 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting. This is your chance to stay up to date on beef industry trends and policies. Meet with industry leadership and your fellow cattlemen and women. Plus, you'll get insights on hot topics at the Issues Forums. Mark your calendar for the 2018 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting, August 1st to the 4th in Denver. Find out more at ncba.org.
There is a new world out there, revealing itself in unpredictable ways. A world that demands more from the land and those who grow, farm, and build on it. This new world calls for the ingenuity to get more out of it, while preserving as much as we can. After all, to stay ahead of tomorrow, we need to be equipped for it today.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. NCBA is the oldest cattle industry organization, working every day to defend your interests in Washington, D.C. And there are big benefits to being a member. You'll get news you can use in the National Cattleman and policy updates from Beltway Beef. Plus big discounts from John Deere, Cabela's, and more great partners. Join now. Call 866-233-3872 or sign up online at ncba.org.
As we told you earlier, the Beef Improvement Federation has worked to give producers access to the tools and knowledge they need to make the best genetic decisions. Here now to talk about these efforts is Lee Leachman. He's Vice President of the Beef Improvement Federation. Lee, thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you for inviting us.
So tell us this, how have cow-calf producers and the beef industry at large benefited from the work of the Beef Improvement Federation over time?
You know, analyzing these genetics is really complicated. And at one level, we've got these just brilliant scientists designing these systems that analyze these genetics. And yet, we've got to have that technology hit the ground running. And so you've got to have interaction between the producers that are with the cattle every day, putting good cow sense into that analysis and vice versa. And this is a place where it's really a forum where we interact and exchange ideas. And that's vital to the success of selection.
So does the work of BIF impact and improve all breeds or just some specific breeds?
Well, absolutely. It's all breeds because all these scientists are working on these models that work just as well to select Limousin as they do Angus or a Shorthorn or a Brahman. And so you find all the breed associations come together there. And one of the things that BIF does is it standardizes the way we analyze animals and the way we talk about that analysis. And you've probably even seen in the press a crossbreed conversion table that BIF puts out each year.
You bet.
And so we're really trying to help producers understand how to improve each breed and how those breeds work together.
And how to use those tools, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So as you and Donald and the rest of the leadership team plan this year's meeting, what are some of the topics that will be top of mind?
This year, we have general sessions that are kind of designed to take in the big picture. And we have two general sessions. The first one is going to talk about where should you be heading selection-wise? You know, I think it's confusing today. I mean, we have some people talking about most efficient commodity production. We have some people talking about high quality. There's these ideas about new traits. That's confusing. So we're going to talk about that, and we've got some great speakers who are really going to stretch our thoughts and challenge us on that. The second session is talking about how is we use the word ownership of the industry changing, but you know, data is everything today.
You bet.
Who owns this data? Where is it? What's going to happen? What can we learn from the dairy industry and the swine industry? And what can that teach us about how we want to make decisions going forward in the beef industry?
That's fantastic. It sounds like a great agenda. So personally, what excites you most about this year's convention?
Well, we get to organize, as the incoming president, I get to organize the Young Producers Symposium. And there'll be 100 to 200 young producers who want to get engaged. And this is a great thing. I can remember going as a young man and just being lost at this meeting, but this meeting kind of gets you plugged in, and we'll have some challenging speakers. The other part that's fun is BIF's had a long tradition of giving awards to top individuals in all sectors, in the commercial sector, the seed stock sector. We do service awards. We do an ambassador award, which we were fortunate enough to give to you last year for all your work through Cattlemen to Cattleman to reach out to our industry. So it's fun just to see that and be there among all these leaders, all these people trying to do better for the industry.
Yeah,
it's great.
That was quite an honor, and I thoroughly enjoyed the meeting. That's absolutely the case. Looking forward to being part of that this year as well. So tell us this, why should cow-calf producers, other beef industry leaders be part of BIF, and how do they do that if they want to become involved in the Beef Improvement Federation?
I always say one of the hardest things about ranching, you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to be experts in all these areas. If you want to learn more about genetics, whether that's in your commercial herd, in terms of how you should select in your seed stock herd, or if you're in academics or education and you want to be on the cutting edge of this stuff, you know, BIF's a great place to come and learn. And I think you'll go home with strategies that'll change how you look at your beef cow herd. And that's exciting.
That is very exciting, and there's no better place to do it than right here in colorful Colorado in June. It'll be a beautiful, beautiful venue for a great meeting. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Kevin.
Remember, the 50th Annual Convention and Research Symposium will be held June 20th through the 23rd in Loveland, Colorado. If you're looking for details on the event, or if you want more information on the Beef Improvement Federation itself, visit the website beefimprovement.org. Still ahead on Cattleman to Cattleman, we'll examine the cattle production cycle for producers in Hawaii and how it differs from the operations on the mainland. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you concerned about the impact government policies could have on your cattle business? One way to make your voice heard in Washington is by joining NCBA. When you join, you'll have access to key policy updates and insights from Beltway Beef. It's the best way to hear directly from NCBA's DC team. Beltway Beef provides valuable policy information, and it's free for NCBA members. Stay in touch with Beltway Beef. Join now at ncba.org.
What does it mean to be an American cattleman? It means you have what it takes where it counts, on the inside. At Ritchie, we understand that. It's what's on the inside that defines us. We share the same values: ingenuity, commitment, sense of pride. These are the values that built this country. They're the values that built this company. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattleman since 1921.
One of the great strengths of the cattle industry in America is our diversity. Cattle are raised in nearly every state and in vastly different landscapes and conditions. But there's nowhere cattle are raised that's quite like Hawaii. And joining me now from Hawaii Cattlemen's Council are Dr. Lisa Wood and Dale Sandlin. You know, we talked earlier about the 5-part video series that you all created, and I guess I would start with you, Lisa. What was the purpose? What are some of the goals that you had in mind in creating this series about the cattle industry in Hawaii?
We wanted to be able to highlight some of the unique features of our industry. As you said, many people don't even realize that we've been growing cattle in Hawaii for over 200 years. We had the opportunity to visit several of our ranches. We have ranches scattered across 5 major islands, and we chose to focus on 5 specific areas. One is the unique history that we have. The second is our production cycle, which is again quite a bit different from the mainland. The third was the health and well-being of our animals. It's our environmental stewardship. And the last was our vision for the future of Hawaii's cattle industry.
And Dale, my understanding is you are sharing these online with consumers and everyone. What kind of reception have you gotten so far?
Well, overwhelmingly supportive up to now. We're currently featuring those videos on our websites as well as on our YouTube channel. We're looking at making a bigger splash with that, but it's been well received, and it's from the feedback that we've heard, it's been that it's a true, honest representation of our industry, and it's allowing for both us to inform on our concerns that we have and the challenges that we face, but also in the quality and commitment that we do put into our product each and every day.
We're going to see a clip from the video regarding the production cycle and how it differs in Hawaii. Dr. Wood, would you tell us just a little bit about what is different about producing cattle in Hawaii than the mainland?
One of the first things is that we have a year-round growing season.
Okay.
And that means we don't have to put up feed the way some of our mainland partners do, but it does also mean that we're at the mercy of Mother Nature, and she has a lot of influence over how our grass grows. The second thing is we are surrounded by water, so transportation is a critical issue for us, not only for receiving goods, but also getting our product to market. And lastly, the diversity of Hawaii. We have a huge diversity in the way where cattle are managed in our state. In some ranches, they go all the way from sea level up to 8,000 feet. We have one rancher that is in full view of an active volcano, so you can imagine the unique challenges that we might face.
Yeah. That's absolutely fascinating. And now let's head back to Hawaii to learn more about how producers raise cattle there.
There's nothing like raising cattle in Hawaii. There are ranches and grazing lands on nearly all of the islands, and for the men and women who care for their animals and their land each day, their job is filled with challenges and rewards. Hawaii's landscape and climate is incredibly varied, and that variety directly impacts how they care for cows, raise calves, and manage the state's natural resources.
Well, gosh, Hawaii is a whole different bird from most any place on the mainland, in that you can go from an extremely arid climate to extremely wet within 10, 15, 20 miles. So, and within a real close proximity, not very many miles. So it creates a whole different variety of situations and pluses and minuses on how you run your operation.
There's a lot of extreme contrasts, and so it's important that the cattle are able to adapt. Our cattle really have to be adaptable from sea level all the way up to 8,000 foot elevation, and from dry desert country to more wet rainforest type area.
My dad said we got this piece of ground because no one else wanted it, and it's kind of the truth. It's one of the toughest, most rugged pieces of real estate that a cattle operations run on in this state. But, oh, what do you got to say? You love it because it's not an easy piece of country to work. The animals have to want to work with you to make it work, because you can't cowboy this country. It's rough, the lava is relentless, unforgiving. If you think you're just going to run out there and do something, I've fallen in a hole. My horse, my dog, everything just fell right in a lava tube. So the country's non-forgiving, and you have to work with it. And I'm serious. When it's raining, cattle don't want to work, livestock don't want to work. But a beautiful morning like this, and everything wants to work.
Hawaii ranchers are experts in raising cows and calves. Some ranches finish their cattle on grass and market their beef to local stores and restaurants. Others ship their calves to the mainland for finishing in feedlots. Either way, all of these operations are dependent on managing grass to keep their animals healthy and growing, while ensuring that their natural resources are maintained.
We have a huge variance in our microclimates and our annual precipitation in a very short relative distance. So it gives us the ability with intensive grazing to adjust very much to where you are on the mountain and to your pasture and weather conditions.
That really is the only advantage we have for ranching in Hawaii, is that we can grow grass year-round. And so in order to do so, though, we do have to have rainfall year-round. Mother Nature, when she gives it to us, she's pretty generous, and when she decides not to give it to us, it can be pretty tough business. But for the most part, managing that resource, that's our primary responsibility. That's what we focus on. We do a lot of rotational grazing. We try to manage the forages so that we have an optimal amount of cover, basically try to prevent the weeds from coming in as well.
One thing with handling our cattle with intensive grazing, we're moving them. Some herds will move every day, some will move every other day, just depending on where they are and the size of the paddocks they're in. So our cattle are really used to having people around, and they're most times they're waiting for you at the gate. They'll tell you when it's time to move.
You know, you graze them one way for a cow-calf operation, another for stockers, and then you got to really get intense when you're finishing cattle. And every little hiccup can mean a big gap in gains. We think we're headed in the right direction, and we just got to just keep our eye on the ball and make sure that we continue to improve at every chance that we can.
Again, you know, grazing is a year-round occurrence when we have the opportunity. And so managing that forage resource is key to our success. So we do some intensive grazing where we move the animals fairly quickly, and every couple of days we'll be moving these animals to a different pasture, and that allows the grass to recover quicker.
Ranchers work to match their cattle breed to their landscape and climate, and they manage the genetics of their herds so their cows have the ability to thrive and produce the highest quality calves.
Mama cow that you just drove past would weigh 1,300 to 1,500 pounds. Just a mile that way, a cow can't weigh more than 900 pounds. Just, that's how diverse this country is. The soil out there is thin, relatively new, eruptions and dust blown in from other eruptions. Where the land can support a bigger cow is there's pockets of deep soil, more mature soil types.
You know, because we have such a diversity of climate and altitude, the Angus Charolais cross, which has been more market-driven than environment-driven, has worked well for us here. I think because the cows and the bulls that we use are born here and are acclimated locally.
So we're looking out for the nutrition of that cow when she's pregnant. We're looking out for the nutrition for that cow and that calf when she has that calf at her side and is raising her up.
We basically run primarily Angus cows on the ranch, and we have 2 breeding seasons. We try to match it with the rainfall that comes throughout the year. So we have basically 2 production cycles going on all the time. We're primarily a cow-calf operation here, but we've been transitioning to raising more cattle for local beef production as well.
My vision for the future of ranching in Hawaii is a growing grass-fed or somewhat grass-fed beef program here. Most of the cattle are shipped out of state, and I certainly hope that we can develop the industry here in Hawaii where the cattle are kept here. It's more green, if you want to call it, but it's also something that would add to the food security of Hawaii. If we can develop infrastructure and demand in Hawaii to keep the cattle here, it'll be good for everyone.
Beef production in Hawaii has been one of the stable primary sources of agriculture. We've been a very resilient industry. There's a lot of opportunity for us to continue to be a large part of the food production. We see it actually increasing over the years. There is opportunity for us to do so. The forage resource, if we can take advantage of that, we can probably double our beef production for the state of Hawaii.
Still ahead, it's time for a visit with our good friend Baxter Black. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Well, I think a rancher has to be a steward of the land. There's nobody else that can take care of land better than a rancher.